is Deborah, and this is another Design with Me tutorial. Today we're going to be learning how to create tables in InDesign. So if you haven't watched the first tutorial for InDesign, it teaches most of the basic tools and tips and how to create a stage in InDesign, so I would highly recommend watching that before watching this one. I'll leave a link to it up top. So without further ado, let's get into the program. And before we get into the program, I'm just going to say that my background is from yumiart.com. It is an artist that I really like. I got to give her a shout out because her stuff is in my video. Anyway, let me open InDesign. Now, right off the bat, don't worry if your InDesign doesn't look like mine. My operating system I'm running is a little bit older because I want to run my video game, Final Fantasy. So they don't support the higher operating systems. So right now I am on 2021, and eventually I will upgrade because the computer can handle it. But I think Creative Cloud is on 2023 right now. So if it doesn't look 100% like mine, it's still going to be very similar to what we're doing, and the program doesn't really change all that much. So right off the bat, you'll see that this opens up. You might see recent projects that you worked on. If you did work on any, this tends to keep a backlog file of all the recent files that you have worked on in the program. Sometimes, maybe like once a month, and this is like a little extra tip. Sometimes for the program to run a little bit more smoothly, I like to delete the cache for the history of this part here. And I do that maybe once a month so that the program doesn't crash, because I found before the programs used to crash quite often because it had too many files sort of stored in the cache. So in order to do that, when the program is actually launching, when you've clicked on it, you'll want to hold down Shift, Control, Command, and Alt all at the same time. And a window will pop up asking if you want to clear your cache, and you can just say yes. And once you've done that, all the recent stuff will be gone. Like it'll just be a blank stage. So little tip, if you're working in InDesign a lot and you find your program is running really, really slow, or it's not opening fast enough, you'll want to go and do that and see if that helps. Anyway, we're going to create a new file. And right away, when you click create a new file, you're going to see this window that pops up. Now, with this window, I want to say that you have to know what you're doing with your project before you get into the program. It's actually easier if you know if it's for print, web, or mobile. So I know that I'm going to be doing this for print. So print profile here, I'll click. And that means I'll be working in CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. If it was web, then it would create a color profile for RGB, which is red, blue, and green, which is the color profile for web. So it changes the color profiling depending on what you choose. And so I know that I'm going to be doing print. I'm going to go into the print tab, and I'm going to choose 8.5 by 11, but they have other sizes that are already preset. And I don't like working in picas, so I'm going to work in inches. That's just what I'm used to. You can change a unit size over here. You can also change the file name here where it says preset details. I'm going to say tables. Page numbers, it's however many pages you want in the document. Right now I only want one, so I'm just going to leave it at 1. Facing pages is if you're doing a booklet and you need the pages to be side by side, you would do facing pages. But because this is not a booklet, I'm just teaching you how to do a table in the InDesign file. We're going to click off of that. Start number is the start number of what you want your page to start at. Primary text frame, you can leave that unchecked. We only want 1 column, but if you were doing a booklet or a magazine and you needed a bunch of columns, like text columns, like a newspaper, so you need like 3 or 4, this would be where you would put that in so that when the stage opens or the board opens, you'll have margins set to each column so that you don't have to do too much. And then this would be the space between your columns, so your column gutter. We're not doing that. We just want one column. So I'm going to put 1. Margin, as I explained in the first one, is your safety. It's where you want to design, and you want to design within that margin. So right now it's set to 0.2, 0.5. I'm going to set it to 0.25. And because this link is linked together, it's going to change all the top, bottom, left, and right to the same thing that I changed it to. So if I click, it changes it all to 0.25. Now, if I want the top or bottom to be different, I could unclick the link and change this to 0.5, which means the top will have a 0.5 safety, the bottom, left, and right will only have 0.25, but we don't want that. We want it to be uniform across the board, so we're going to do 0.25 with the link clicked. Bleed, I explained this a little bit in the first one, and again in this one I'll say for printing. If a machine is cutting your print, the machine sometimes is a millimeter or a little bit off from the cut line of, say, a poster. And if you don't include a bleed, which means your design isn't bleeding off the page, you're going to get a white strip because the machine isn't exact. So usually designers will do about 0.125, like a 1/8 of an inch as a bleed. Some designers might do more than that, 0.25. It depends. So if you get specifications from a magazine, that they will oftentimes say, please set your safety at this, set your bleed at this. And that's why they ask for that, or those specific specifications. So we're going to leave it at 1/8. Even though we're not bleeding off the page, we're going to leave it at 1/8. And the slug, we're just going to leave that alone. I'm not going to touch it. So we click create. Right off the bat, you'll see the red bleed line, and inside is the 0.2 margin line, where we want to design within that space. So if you've opened and created the new file and you've gotten this far, your tools on your right and your left might not be the same as mine. This is my workspace, and I like to use the advanced workspace. But you can create your own workspace. So if you go to Window Workspace, there's a bunch of different options. You could pick and choose what you want to see. Like if I wanted to see properties here, well, it'd open the window of properties. And you can drag this tool and put it inside of your toolbox on the right. And alternately, you can also save your workspace. So say you've created a workspace that you like, custom. You open all these windows, you drag them to the right-hand side, and you want to save it. You can go Workspace, New Workspace, name that workspace like Design, whatever. And if you press OK, and you go back to the window Workspace, Design is now there. And it's checked off because that's the workspace that I'm working in, but I don't like that. So I'm just going to go back to Advanced and delete the properties. I don't really want that there. So you can also delete your workspace, which I'm going to do right now, really quick. But it means that if you close the program and then you reopen the program, your workspace is saved. So you can always come back to Windows Workspace and then it'll always be in that area unless you cleared your cache. So don't clear your cache if you don't want your workspace to go away. I only do it, again, like once every few months, but that was a little tip in case your program is running a little funny. So you can take the arrow and you can drag it so it's icons, or if you like seeing the names, or even if you want to completely expand it, you can do that. I don't like doing that, so I just sort of have it as this because I like having as much room as possible on my stage. Now, we're going to select the text tool here. And we're going to use the text tool to drag it across the margin line, all the way across. And then you can either use the shortcut for the table. I find the shortcut to be cumbersome because it's 4 buttons. So I'm just going to go table, insert table. So that's the shortcut right there if you want it. But I like to do just table, insert table. And once you do that, it'll open a box that says insert table. You can add in as many rows and columns as you like, depending on your project. So for this, let's do days of the week. easy enough. Body row, I think, would be around 5, and columns would be around 7. So you can see that I had done this earlier, where I did create a calendar earlier for my photography. So it's already set, but when you get into it, it'll probably say 0 or 1 or something like that. So you can set it to 5 or 4 or whatever you need to, and columns we're going to set it to 7 because there's 7 days in the week. Header row you can leave, footer row you can leave. That's just, again, header and footer, pretty self-explanatory. Basic table is fine, but there are table styles that you can create, save as a preset, and then apply it to a new table that you're inserting. Right now we don't have that, so we're just going to leave it at 5 and 7 and then press OK. So you'll notice right now when you're in the program, there's these blue lines that are inside of the table, and I'm using the zoom tool to zoom in on that. I don't like having those blue lines because that's not actually how it's going to look. It's just what the program produces. So if you want to get rid of those blue lines, you can do View, Extra, Hide Frame Edges, or up Command H. And that will give you a better view of what you're looking at without that line, because I find the line super distracting in the middle. So now it's what it's supposed to look like, or what it will look like when it prints out. So right off the bat, you know, there's a table there, but it looks kind of boring and you want to design on it. The first thing to note is that when you highlight with your text tool for tables, if you highlight the entire cell, it means that you're going to be editing the cell. If you highlight the entire row, it means you're going to be editing the entire row. And then if you highlight the entire column, same thing. If you just click on a cell, you can type in the cell. It's basically the content within in the cell. So we're going to type in the days of the week. Sunday. You can tab to get to the next cell. Monday, tab, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I don't really like the font that I've used, so I'm going to change the font. The way to do that is you can, the silly way to do it is to basically copy, Command C and highlight just the text, which will only change the one. The other way to do it is to highlight all of the cells and apply that character change or the text change or font change to the cell itself. So once you have them all highlighted, you can either go to your character panel here and change the font. You can change the font up here, and if you don't have the character panel, you can go to Windows, Type, and Tables, Command T, or Character. So I'm going to change mine to something a little bit more modern, maybe DIN. And I'm going to apply a center on these cells only because I have them highlighted. So I'm going to do center align. You can do center align for text in paragraph as well on this side. So here or here. And that looks much better to me. So I want to make it so that these bottom cells are bigger, but I want them to be uniform. So anytime you see this little teeny weeny arrow, it means that you can move that line down, up, whatever. Same thing with this. You can move that line. You can move the inside. You can move any line that's there. But the thing is, when you move the line, it's not even. So I want to make these bigger. All of these. Not the top bar, just the bottom. So I pulled down the bottom line, just the bottom line. And then you want to highlight all your cells. So you take your mouse, you put your cursor in the top one, and you highlight all the cells. And you can right click on the table while the cells are highlighted and say distribute rows evenly. So now all of the boxes underneath that distributed evenly, so they're all the same size. You can do alternately, you can do the same thing with the column where you could pull it out highlight the whole thing and say distribute column evenly, and it would do the same thing with the column. But we just want to do it with the row for now. So after you've done that, say you want to style this. So say now we want to style this calendar to look kind of cool, right? You can highlight the top bar, and because you highlighted all the entire row, you're changing what's in, like, you're changing the table itself, not the text or the content inside of it. You can do that too, but right now we want to change the color inside of the top bar. So when you go into your swatch panel here, this stroke represents these black strokes that you're seeing. Same thing with here. You can switch to edit the stroke color, or you can switch to edit the fill color. We're going to edit the fill to, say, blue. But I don't like the fact that the text is black, so I want to change the text to white. Again, you want to highlight the entire row. And this little box here, the formatting effects container, means that you are changing the box itself, the content of the table. This box here, the T, means that you're changing just the text color. And you can select white. And once you selected that, it changed just the text to white. And I'm sorry, I have a cold, so my throat is a little tickly while I'm doing this. So now that the text is white, I'm still finding the lines are too thick. So one of the things that I learned, and it was difficult for people to learn this part, I find, like, with tables, people get frustrated because they think it's hard, and because of the way that it works with the tables, it's annoying. It can be annoying sometimes. Now, this cell here reflects the table down here. And what I mean by that is if I highlight this cell, you'll see that all of the lines are highlighted. If I unhighlight all of them, or say I only have 2 highlighted, and I say I changed it to pink or something, because these are not highlighted, not all of it changed to pink. Only the 2 lines in the middle changed to pink. And that that I find frustrates a lot of people, because they forget that in order to change the lines, they all have to be highlighted up here for it to change together. Now, I actually like this grid because that means I know that if I just want to change one side of the table to pink, well, then I can do that because I could just unhighlight everything and only highlight the left line. If I want to change just the bottom and top, left and right, in the middle, this is what I would use to do that. There's another way to do it too, but I'll show you later in terms of, or I'll show you like what table options there are. But this I like to use because it's manually easy to use. So with all of them selected now, because I don't like how thick this line is, see, right off the bat, I highlighted it, and you see here, this line is not highlighted. What this means is that all of these are not going to change. So if I change this to 0.25, so here's a stroke. The stroke is what I'm trying to change. You can go to stroke here too. If I change this to 0.25, it's not going to change the one that is not highlighted. Now I have a thick line in between. So you have to make sure that when you're highlighting these cells, everything in the grid is highlighted so that it changes all of them together. I hope that's clear. It does cause a lot of issues with a lot of designers, but the grid itself is self-explanatory. It's basically the table. This table is reflecting this table. And anything you don't have highlighted is what you don't want changed, and anything that's highlighted is what's going to change. So hopefully that makes a bit more sense. Now, in between Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I want to change that line to white. So I'm going to highlight that entire row. I'm going to get rid of this, these ones. And I'm only going to select the line in the middle. That means all the lines in the middle are going to change to white. Now that part's confusing because the grid is not reflecting all 7 of the columns, it's only reflecting 1. So when I say that this is the middle, it means that these two, if you select these two, you're selecting the sides of this table. And that's not what you want. You just want the middle. So we're going to click the middle. And we're going to change the color of the stroke here. So it has to be this box here with the line to white. And that changed all the ones in the middle to white. So starting to look pretty good. And now what we want to do is say for this you wanted to alternate your colors. You wanted every single row to be sort of like blue, black, or something like that. You would then highlight your table, go to Table, Options, and go to Table Setup. Alternately, again, you can press the 4 buttons here for key command, but again, I don't like doing it because it's like 4 buttons on my keyboard that I have to press. So I just go to Table, Table Options, Table Setup. Within Table Setup, there's a bunch of things you can do here. Now, this is why I say tables are very useful because there's a lot of things that you can do with them. Now, right off the bat, you'll see the table dimensions are exactly what we put in when we insert the table. It's 5 rows, 7 columns. Header and footer row are 0, 0. Table border is a mix of things, so this has been grayed out. Table spacing is here. So table spacing is basically the space inside of the table. Row strokes you can change here as well. In fact, with row strokes here, you can do every other row, every second row, every third row, custom row, and you can have them alternate colors. So if you did every other row and you change this to pink and you change that to blue, every other stroke in this row will be blue. So blue, black, black. So I guess I could do it just to show you. So I'm going to say 0.25, solid, change the color to blue, and then I'm going to change this color, 0.25. I'm going to change it to something you can see, pink. I can skip the first row, I can skip the last row, and then if I click OK, you'll see pink, blue, pink. Now, that's what this is really good for, so we're going to go back because that's not what we really wanted to do. I was just showing you how that works. Back to table setup. So that was row strokes. You can do the same thing with the column. Every other column, every second column, every third column. But we want to do it to the fill. So we're going to do every other row and we're going to fill it with blue. The tint is the lightness of the color. So if you don't want it to be like the really, really loud blue, you can change it to like 8% tint and it'll be a light blue instead. And then every other blue, this one is black, so we don't want it to be fully black. Let's change it to 8% tint as well. Leave the overprint unchecked, you don't need that. And then header and footer, again, you can change over here, but we don't have that. We put 0, 0 for the header and footer. So if we click OK, you're going to see now that it's gray, blue, which is the black color but tinted, and the blue color but tinted. The top one seems to have changed. I don't really want that, so I'm just going to highlight it, go back and change it to, in the swatch panel, just highlight it and then change it back. There you have it. Now you have a table that has alternating colors and you have the solid up top. Let's put in some numbers on each one just to make it look more like a calendar. Let's start on Tuesday. 1, 2, 3, 4. I know that's not all the days in the calendar, is usually 40, 30, but you can highlight it all and then change the text to din, which is the same one that I used for the top. So let's go to din. And you can change the size of the font too. So I'm going to change it to 10. Same thing over here. You can go to the character panel and change the font size. And yeah, that's pretty much it for tables. Hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial and hopefully you learned a little bit. I could show you the project that this was used in, just for curiosity's sake. If you want to save this file, go File, Save As, and you can save it to your desktop or wherever you want to save it. Alternately, I will show the file that I worked on, but alternately, if you had taken, let's see if I have an image here to sort of give you an example. So say you had dragged and dropped an image in this file as well. Change the image to 2. Say you had an image in this file, which I did cover in the first tutorial, but say you had an image in this file. If you're saving this file, make sure you package this file. Anytime you have images and fonts that are not, they're in your computer, but you might move it around and then the link in InDesign will be broken. So anytime you do a file in InDesign, please, please, please make sure you package it. And the way to do that is File, Package. And then here it'll tell you, it'll have a little summary. It'll say summary, fonts, links and images, prints and stuff like that. You don't need to worry about that unless there's like an icon that says there's something wrong with the file. So say I took this image and I moved it here. Now there's an error in the file. It says error, question mark, image is gone, it's missing. The reason we package these files is because we don't want the image to go missing. And Quark Express had a very, I don't know if any of you know Quark Express, but Quark Express was the program before InDesign. Anytime you would open that thing, because it didn't know how to package a file, all the links would be missing. And then you'd have to go into your computer and search for every single link, and you'd have this question mark. So it's very, very important that when you're doing stuff like this, that you package your files after you're done with them. So we're going to go File, Package, and then we're going to package it, save, put it on the desktop. It's called Tables. Sure. Don't worry about this, just says stuff about the service provider, etc., whatever. So we package. You can delete the save file here, close this, and now there's a folder on my desktop called Tables. So when I open that folder, it has an INDD file, which is the InDesign file, the same file that we just saved. And you'll notice that the link is not missing. There's no question mark here. It has an IDML file, which is also important because if somebody, say you're working on a file, but you're working in the 2023 version of Adobe Photoshop or InDesign, and I'm working in the 2021 version, it means that I can't open your INDD file because yours is a newer version of Adobe CC. This is the downward compatible version, so not only does InDesign save the new file or the file in INDD in your version, but it saves down a version or two in the IDML so that somebody who's using an older version of Adobe can open it and then they can work on it. It saves a PDF just for viewing purposes, so if you want to see it. It saves everything that's linked in the file, so if you were to put a bunch of different images and place them on the stage, the links folder will have all those images packaged nicely inside of the same folder, so it'll never break the link. Unless you move the image from the links folder, which you wouldn't do. And it collects the fonts that were used in the file. So anytime you open the file, you're not going to get an error. And a lot of people make this mistake where they save the file, but they don't package it, and then they don't know where they put all their files, and then they have to look for it. InDesign does a nice job of packaging it all together and putting it in one folder for you so that you don't have to do any of that. Another thing I'll mention, which is not part of this tutorial, is if you are packaging a file, but this image is off the stage, and you package the file like this, say it's a different image. If you package the file like this, it's not going to package what's off the stage. So it has to be on the stage in order for it to package your images. If it's out here, it's just going to be linked to whatever it's linked to on the computer. It's not going to be linked to your links folder. So make sure if you're doing a project and you have a bunch of images here, but you still want them to be packaged in the same folder, just move them over to the stage, package the folder, and then open the file and then move them off, just so that it's all together. I don't know if InDesign is going to come up with a way to fix that little issue or if they already have, but yeah, that's how you work with packaged files. Anyway, I went way off tangent. Don't save. I went way off tangent. I was just going to show you the project that I did that required this table. So I was working on this calendar. And let me just put it in preview mode, which you go down here. Preview. I was working on a little calendar, and this is what I was doing. And then I said, hey, you know, maybe people want to see the tutorial for how to make a calendar. So the stroke here, if you're seeing, it doesn't look like what we did, but the stroke here is white, and that's why I'm getting the white lines, and the fill is black. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and that you followed along and didn't get lost. If you have any questions about InDesign or anything you would like to ask me, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video, and we'll see which one it is. I don't know if I'm going to do Photoshop, Premiere, or Illustrator. So let me know which one you want to see, and I will go ahead and try to explain how to do what I do within those programs. So far, I think I've done InDesign and Illustrator. I don't think I've done one for Photoshop yet. Maybe I'll do Photoshop. We'll see. Anyway, have a good one.